I'm not sure who's
There we go.
handling that.
You're now live.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. Minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the meeting page of the Council website. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, I will ask all members of the board who have video cameras to keep their video cameras switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep their microphone muted except when I invite them to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way. And any members wishing to ask questions or make a comment should indicate this by clicking the raised hand function on their screen. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question, and then mute it again to allow the officer to respond. I would ask for your patience if we run into technical problems, and should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. If it's not possible to address the fault, the meeting may be abandoned until such time as it can be reconvened. Members, I'll begin the meeting with a roll call to establish who is present. When I call out your name, please confirm by unmuting your microphone and stating that you are present. Barry O'Sullivan.
Present.
Councillor King.
Present, and Chair for being a little late. I had trouble getting into the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome. We waited for you. And myself, Councillor Dennis Payne. Rhiannon, would you report any apologies for absence, please?
Yeah, we've had a few apologies. So we've received them from Martin Dax, Val Lim, and Councillor Philippa Slatter. Thank you. I would like to thank board members for recording their apologies with the Democratic Services team. It ensures in good time that the board meeting is caught and can then therefore proceed. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest in matters of this meeting? Thank you. I'll move on. This is the first meeting since the annual general meeting of full council, and therefore the expectation is to elect the chair and vice chair of the board for the coming year. However, due to the reduced number of members in attendance, with the consent of the board, I'm proposing we postpone this item until our next meeting on the 4th of November, especially since we are proposing to host this meeting in person in Newshire Hall. And of course, any members of the press and public are welcome to join us there. So I'll move on to the first item on the agenda. We are being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 29th of April as correct record. Do any members have questions on those minutes? And this is comments about the accuracy of the minutes only at this point.
I agree, Chair. I propose that they are an accurate record. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
I agree too.
Thank you very much. On that basis, the recommendation to approve the minutes is carried. I will sign a hard copy when the board next meets in person. Looks like I will have a lot of signature to do in November. An updated action log has been included in the published papers for this meeting. Are there any questions on that action log? That looks like that there aren't any questions there. Thank you. Then since no members have indicated they wish to speak, we will take the action log as noted. The minutes of the Pension Fund Committee are presented for information. If any members have questions, would they raise their hands now? Okay, no members have indicated they wish to speak, so we'll note the minutes of the Pension Fund Committee. And similarly, we have the minutes of the Pension Fund Investment Subcommittee. We cannot question their accuracy, but if you have any questions on those. Okay, no members have indicated they wish to speak, so we will note the minutes of the Investment Subcommittee. Item number 3 is the administration report. I'm not quite sure who's going to be presenting that item. Is that you, Michelle?
It is, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, so just really to draw your attention to just some of the key information within this report. As you'll see on page 1 under administration performance, just really to highlight there the one complaint that was picked up during the period, but also the 4 compliments just under there as highlighted. To put this in perspective, there were 5,512 calculations undertaken during this period, so that's really good there. With the KPIs, again, some good performance there. They've been consistently good with all targets being met with the exception of 2. Details of why those 2 were missed is under section 3.4 for further information. The employer contributions under section 4.3. For March, we've received 99.3% of contributions on time. And for April, this was 100%, which was really good on that as well. Under section 5, under breaches of the law, there is a non-material breach there, which is relating to 2 IDRP cases that the determinations were issued just outside of the extended time. And as you'll see there from the course of action, this relates directly with section 6.3 of the report. So as you'll see there, the top 2 cases, we have the outcomes, the upheld and the not upheld on the 19th and 12th of May. Obviously the extensions were to the 10th of May, and that's why we've just highlighted that as a non-material breach there. But the important thing is that both members have received their determinations now. Under section 7, this is a slightly unusual case. So we've brought this to you as a significant overpayment. So what normally happens is the fund has controls in place that mitigates against any significant overpayment. So we have the mortality screening for our UK residents, and we also have the proof of existence exercise for any residents that reside overseas. Unfortunately, in this particular case, the member died overseas. However, they were a UK resident, so they had effectively slipped between those 2 processes. In these particular cases, there is nothing further the fund can do. We are solely reliant on the executor or the next of kin to let us know. But as you'll see there in 7.2, the team are really good in issuing the invoice for this overpayment and communicating effectively with the executor in this case. And the full amount was received on the 27th of May. So that risk there has been minimised there and full payment made. Apart from that, that's all the key information I just wanted to draw out of the report, but happy to take any further questions.
Barry, you have a question?
It's just the last section about the overpayment. It's just sort of raised awareness just because it's part of my day job, but presumably the person was on holiday or there temporarily, hence why. So I'm aware just that they can, if someone's in overseas but only there temporarily, say on holiday, they can still do the Tell Us Once service, but of course that's optional. But so if they didn't do it, yeah, I guess you wouldn't have picked it up. So.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one. Again, the onus is still on that next of kin or executor to have taken that action, and it's not one of our kind of, we do use Tell Us Once, but as you say, with it being optional, it's not one of our, default processes to rely on 100%. But yeah, thank you. That's useful to know as well.
I've got a couple of comments. I mean, I noted that one, and you just seem, we just seem to be on a loser. There was nothing thoroughly practical that could be achieved there. But thank you for the report, and it was good to see that the money was repaid. And just noted the compliments in 2.1. That's great. Thank you. I had a question about the mention of casework in 3.4. Do you have any sort of automated tools to help you manage casework?
Yeah, I mean, Mark might want to come in here as well, but we have a task management system, and effectively all the casework is logged within that system. And within that system, there are various stages as well, from a case from start to finish. So we are able to interrogate that system to produce reports on various aspects of the work that's undertaken. It's what we also use to help report on our KPIs and just general workflow and what we've got outstanding in the office at any point of time as well.
Okay, that's absolutely great. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you, and it's good to hear. And can I just ask a question on the 6.3, the issue that was upheld? What happens then? I mean, it was upheld. So presumably the membership records were corrected. Anything else happened? Just curiosity.
I haven't been that closely involved with that case. I don't know if Mark knows any more at this stage. If not, I'd be happy to get the further information on that one and report back to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm the adjudicator for the stage one. I mean, obviously what I'm looking at when I'm adjudicating a decision of that nature is, were the records incorrect? Effectively, did it amount to maladministration of a certain level? I mean, generally, yes, we are correcting things. If we've incorrectly paid things, we'll obviously correct that. What it all usually boils down to with the individual member, though, is that they obviously want some form of financial redress for the inconvenience, the distress, etc. we've caused, and that can be the case even when I'm not. I think we've done everything right in terms of the value of the award, but let's say we've given an incorrect estimate at some point in the past. So I would be saying the benefits are correct, but we have caused a degree of maladministration, and therefore some form of compensation is appropriate. So with this particular one, obviously we everything is now correct, and we've given some degree of compensation. It went to stage 2 because the individual wasn't happy with the amount that was awarded. And that's typically what happens, because I am obviously mindful of what ultimately, if it goes to stage 2, that process is going to cost, and equally what award ultimately the Ombudsman might make. And I think generally the awards that the Ombudsman would be prepared to make are lower than what some individuals would want, even at stage 1 of an internal dispute process. So that's the reason it goes through these steps sometimes, even when I'm upholding the complaint.
Thank you for that explanation. That's useful. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on this report? Thank you very much. Then the board is being asked to note the report. I believe we have done that. We now have item 4, the governance and compliance report. Michelle, I believe that one is also down to you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So in this report this time, under section 2.1, we've got a prudential performance update there with just some additional information. So really this is just to confirm that a letter was sent out to the chairs of both the pension fund and the pension committee, just outlining some of the problems that Prudential have been having trouble with. So it highlighted the issues that have come about, the steps that have been taken to resolve the situation, and some of the timescales for this to be resolved. Currently, as I understand it, with ourselves and across the board, there are still some issues. However, I would probably say at this stage, it's still early days in terms of giving them enough sufficient time to be able to resolve some of those issues. So what we will obviously be doing as a fund is just closely monitoring that going forward to make sure that some of those promises in terms of service delivery start to filter through, and we're hopefully in a few months' time in a lot more of a comfortable position with them. Section 2.2 of the report, there has been started to be some information given out on the pension dashboard, and things seem to be moving a bit there now. So as you'll see, there is a progress update report that has been published, and there was also a blog that went out as well, just covering again some of the key information about what we need to be doing to prepare for the dashboards, timelines, the data matching exercises, and things like that. So where we currently are in that journey is that the Department of Work and Pensions are due to publish their response to the consultation in the summer, and the Pension Dashboard Programme will issue a consultation on the draft standards as a result of that response. So from our point of view, over the summer, the first step will be the DWP to publish their response, and then everything will kind of fit in nicely from there. In addition, very recently, the pension regulator has now published new guidance on ensuring compliance with the requirements for the dashboard. And really the general message from that publication is that schemes should be taking action now and start preparing for when the dashboard comes into place. So from our perspective, we have started to do the background research and reading into the dashboards. Some of our officers have been attending webinars. We've started to do the research into the system delivery and how those systems work and what we need to do as part of that. Obviously, the key thing for the dashboards will be data and data quality. So as you're aware, we already have iConnect in place, and that's for the majority of our employers. So we already have a good system in place for monthly data collection. And in addition, we also have a validation process in place as well. So in terms of where we are as a starting point, we feel quite strong that we've got systems in place that hopefully should support obviously the transition to the the dashboards and the onboarding onto that. Section 2.3 of the report is a section there that we've included on policy and strategy updates, really just to have an area where we can either update you on any changes to policies that we've made which weren't material enough to bring the full policies to you, or anything that we've got coming up in the pipeline. So as you can see there, the data improvement policy and plan that went to the Pension Committee on the 10th of June is an agenda item for this meeting as a post-scrutiny review. We've got the reporting breaches of the law, which will be considered under this meeting as a pre-scrutiny item. And what we've also done for this particular meeting is under Appendix 1, we've put in the full cycle review, as we thought that would be beneficial for you to see where we are in terms of our policies and strategy reviews. We've come up with some plans in terms of, obviously, some of them we're a little bit behind in because of various reasons, which we've put in the comments column. Breaches of the law was one of them. And the governance and compliance statement awaiting on further actions to be taken. What I would say is all of those ones have got a planned resolution date in them for them to come either to the board or committee first, depending whether it's pre or post scrutiny. The only other comment I'd make on it is for some of them, they were a bit unrealistic, all being set, or quite a few of them being set an annual review. It became quite unmanageable. So some of them on there have got some suggested new review dates. But apart from that, I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Barry, Simon, do you have any questions? Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wondered if Michelle could say a few things about the appendix. The first one I just wondered about was the annual report and statements of accounts. It says that it's currently being produced in line with statutory deadlines. What is the deadline on that one, Michelle, please?
Oh, I need to think now. Is it September, Mark, that one needs to be in force by? I know we're producing it now to meet the deadline. But
Yeah, sorry, off the top of my head, it's changed over recent years. So sorry, I'm not off the top of my head. We'll have to come back and confirm. So so the annual report component and the accounts component have different deadlines. The annual report component, we are taking to the July Pensions Committee to note, but it goes through the audit committee for formal sign-off because it's part of the main council accounts. So the deadline is driven by the main council accounts, and then the annual report annual report deadline is in the autumn, where we have to publish that on the website, and we bring that to the pension committee twice, generally speaking, once in July, where we've taken it as far as we possibly can at that point in time, and then we bring it, I think, would be to the October committee meeting where it's the final sign-off from the pensions committee. But we will come back with a formal deadline because it has changed over recent years, and it's also actually been compounded by accounts generally being driven late in local government due to the pandemic and various external audit team pressures, where they're struggling to cope with the volume of and degree of complexity of local government audits. But we will circulate that later today to confirm what the official deadline is.
Thanks, Mark. And Michelle, that's fine. And the ones that you referred to where you've reviewed the dates, those are presumably the ones in bold in the appendix, are they, Michelle?
Yeah, so we've reviewed all the dates. So what I've done is gone through every policy and strategy in place and tried to kind of put together where we are. Some of these naturally go through a review cycle anyway, just because of the nature of them. The annual report and statement of accounts is one of them. It's just on a natural annual cycle.
Sure.
With the bold ones, they're the ones that I'm fully aware that we've probably slipped a little bit in terms of review date from the original review date, what we had them set at. So I've just highlighted those as we're aware of them, and they are due to be reviewed within this financial year, just for that reassurance that we're aware of them, but we have got them scheduled to be looked at this year as well.
Will those delays, Michelle, have any implications for the?
No, so I suppose in theory, all of these, you know, the important thing is the policies are in place and they are up and running. I think it's just some of the key details, and it all depends, I guess, on the review in terms of whether we're looking at material or immaterial differences. So, for example, when we move on to the reporting breaches of the law one, we felt that that was getting to a point where we'd kind of waited as long as we possibly could, but there was actually bits in there that we needed to address before the new code came into place. So we're trying to kind of align them and be quite pragmatic. The same with the governance and compliance statement. We could review it now, but because of the process that one would need to go through with relevant councils, as in full council and committee, it seems like it'd be better so that we can do all the changes required in one pension committee and full council and get that whole approval process done in one. So some of them are, you know, quite genuine reasons for wanting to kind of do it all as one process once of those have been through, and any of the other ones we've obviously just scheduled in. Obviously COVID had a bit of an impact on that as well, because there was a period of time when we were just taking more urgent papers, why things kind of settled down for a bit as well. So it's kind of just catching up on some of those as well.
I can understand certainly why the reporting breaches of the law pension regulator has been delayed, and that's, you know, something beyond our control really. But the one that I suppose jumps out a little bit at me is the overpayment of pension policy, because that was due in December of last year and is not scheduled until January 2023. Again, does that have any implications for us? Because overpayment of pensions is something that does fairly regularly crop up.
Yeah, so that particular one and a couple of the others basically have really been down to kind of the resourcing of trying to get some of these policies through, which are kind of earlier when I alluded to the annual cycle of trying to get the volumes through, particularly over a period when it's been quite difficult to do that. With that one, yes, I agree. It does need to be reviewed, and what we've had to do is obviously try and fit it into all of our normal. We've obviously already got quite full agendas of business as usual, and then we obviously need to slot in these on top of that. So what I've tried to do is kind of even it out a bit, so to speak, over the year. But for that one, obviously we have got one in place, so that's the important thing. But I'm happy to, if you feel that you would like that one moved up and swapped with another one later in the year, I can have a look for you to see if we can move that up a bit.
Michelle, I'm happy to go with your judgment if it's not going to have any implications for the fund. So I'm happy to go with that if you can give us that reassurance.
Yeah, that's fine. What I'll do, obviously this plan was a draft plan that we've brought to you just for really initial comments. What we'll do is after this meeting, we'll go through it and just double check. And if we do feel that there is anything that would benefit a movement, we will do that, and then I will let you know.
I'm very happy with that. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon.
I mean, on the list, if my memory serves you right, Michelle, we've already got 3 items from this list on November's board meeting. So the issue about that particular policy is a check on the priority of those 3 additional items over and above business as usual. And I, with Simon, will take your judgment totally on that. Can I say also that I'm actually content with the cycles that you're proposing there. You have switched some policies from previously annual review to biannually, and I'm content there. And the ones where they're not specified, you actually put a review cycle in, and that's great. The one question I have is the governance policy and compliance statement actually is not only the inter-authority agreement, but West Northants constitutional changes. I suppose 2 questions. I'm curious as to what, and I'm curious as to whether that's going to produce a significant delay.
Yeah, so apologies, that probably shouldn't be in there for this version. So effectively, for Northamptonshire Pension Fund, we already had to take through the governance and compliance statement once, just for those changes. But obviously that's not relevant for you, so I apologise for that. So I'll take that out.
Okay.
So yeah, for our point of view, it's literally just at the moment inter-authority agreement. I think there might be some other smaller tweaks that need to be made as well, in terms of some of the roles and things like that. But yeah, it does need a review, but it just seems more pragmatic for that particular one that has that extra layer of scrutiny on it, just to kind of wrap up all of that in one go.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no more issues, Simon or Barry, the board is being asked to note the contents of the report, and I believe we've done that. Thank you. I believe, Mark, you're taking the next item, the data improvement plan. Or have I got this
Indeed.
out?
No, you have. Sorry, I was just playing around with raising hand function at a moment. Yes, indeed. So this is obviously one of those strategies that come into later than we would have desired. It's probably one that in truth we would normally like to put through the local pension board first before it goes to the pensions committee. But because we were so delayed, and I was really keen to get it in place formally, it has gone through the pensions committee, and therefore you're seeing it after that. What it is been completely rewritten from the previous version, so there isn't a track changes version that shows the difference. So there is a clean version. Broadly, what it's doing in the main strategy is setting out, recognizing how important data quality is to everything we do. It's setting out those arrangements we have in place to manage data quality and ensure we get high quality data from employers, our main data providers, and how we receive that, how we maintain that. And so within the strategy itself, you see the annual and cyclical processes that relate to that. And then the plan are the activities that we do in a given year to improve that data quality where it's necessary. And that, I think a lot of that you will see is around the common and conditional data scoring that we do for the regulator. Around about the autumn time, we undertake an assessment and share that score with you and with obviously with the regulator, and then we put a plan of action in place to correct any deficiencies. And then beyond that, there are specific data improvement activities relating to projects. So in this case, it's obviously the evaluation year, so there'll be lots of data work around evaluation. There is McLeod, so we're doing lots of uploads. Or sorry, I should say, we've got the data in to do the uploads. We're holding them back until after the data extract for the evaluation, deliberately. And also the GMP rectification. So sort of the projects, the work to correct the data score, improve the data score, and then that sits on top of all the cyclical and annual processes.
Thank you. So, Barry, Simon, do you have any questions on this plan? Barry?
Yeah, so page 67, regarding at the top scheme employers support. I just wonder if there should be a line in there or something. What happens if an employer doesn't provide? I can see provide timely data or accurate data. I can see it mentions about the support they get, but sort of like what's the consequences of not ultimately providing data in a timely and accurate manner.
Yeah, I mean, so that's set out in the administration strategy, which sets out targets for scheme employers and indeed for ourselves, and what the process of escalation is, and ultimately to fine if they don't deliver. And we do every year. We have a small number of employers that are fined for delayed or non-provision of data, generally around the annual submissions, for example. Corey, I don't know if you just want to say a couple of words about that.
Yeah, just to echo what you've said, it's detailed in the admin strategy. We have an escalation process that we're just looking at streamlining actually at the moment, and putting a new communication out with that this week. I'm hoping to sign off that communication this afternoon, which will reiterate to employers what's expected of them, what we will do in terms of the escalation process, and reminding them that charges will be levied if they don't comply. So that will be reaffirmed hopefully this afternoon, if not Monday.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. But I'm just thinking, if I was just to read this report on its own, should it just at least refer in instructions? Actually, I don't know.
So it's not explicitly setting out in here that there is that possibility of fine. I mean, we can add so this has already been approved by the Pensions Committee. What we can do is, for the next iteration, we can obviously make a note to add that in. But I mean, it is quite clear in the admin strategy that there are, I think generally, employers. So this is obviously sort of a very holistic, high-level helicopter view of how we deal with data. The detail around our expectations and our interactions with employers is in the admin strategy itself. But I mean, it's very easy for us to add a couple of lines in.
Okay. My other point is not to be added to the report, but under the clear data submission templates and forms, the last line mentions that most employer data is provided through iConnect facility. What percentage is not provided that way, or what sort of amount?
I'll step in there, Mark. I haven't checked the figures recently, but the last time we looked, about 2 or 3 months ago, we were up to at least 98% of membership being covered by iConnect. The standouts are just a few small employers in the fund that aren't providing it that way, mainly either because they're new employers and we're onboarding them, or while we were rolling out the program, they're putting new payroll systems in place. So we've put a delay in for some of those. So it's very, very small proportion of the membership now that's not covered.
And My last point is the table on page 70 is regarding the cloud. So I think, Mark, you already mentioned that you already have the data that's needed.
We have, right, okay, so we've got most employers, certainly, and we were getting it in two phases. The second phase was some of the larger employers. I believe there is still some outstanding from that, but there is a process that we're going through to finalise that now. What we're doing once it's all received is we're using a Hayward tool to get it uploaded into the system, and I think out the back end of that there will be some manual interventions required. But certainly this calendar year, we should be having all of it. We'll have all the data that we've been provided. Ultimately, some employers will provide a nil return because they will basically say the data you've got is right already. And that is, I guess, primarily because we've always continued to ask for all of the information, including hours changes. We've never relaxed that requirement for any scheme employer. What we're seeing from talking actually funny enough yesterday to the person leading the project, one of the biggest things that we've been missing is service breaks. So it's not really part-time hours changes, it's breaks in service. And of course they tend to be very, very small and almost immaterial to the benefit anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you for asking the question about most scheme employers. I had that same one on my list. Mark, on page 66, you've got a list of scheme members and then other beneficiaries. And I'm sorry, my brain isn't perhaps in gear. Who are the other beneficiaries that might be?
It would be, it could be dependents of the deceased member, or sorry,
dependent as line 3. I was
yeah,
just
sorry,
thinking,
or it can be for death grant payments. It gets paid to a third party who might not be a relation. That sort of thing.
Okay, thanks very much. And on page 68, you're talking about officers investigating the viability of moving these reconciliations to a more frequent basis. Why?
Sorry, is this around we have a
year-end data reconciliations of full scheme member database is what it's against.
Yeah, so we get so with regards to sort of like the receipt of employer data, so most employers send it in monthly. Some employers still send in an annual return at the end of the year. We run a year-end process of some description, irrespective of the manner in which it comes in. And what we're finding is that the problem with the iConnect data, leaving that to the end of year, is it stores up a number of queries that could be dealt with more frequently. And so we're looking to increase the frequency of, if you like, our year-end process in inverted commas against the iConnect data. So iConnect obviously has a whole load of reconciliations, both before it goes into the system is received by us, but equally when we receive it, we can run certain reconciliations as well. We want to increase some of the reconciliation work so we don't have such a tight deadline at year end.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much. And on the measures of success, do you believe you'll ever hit 100%? 100% is always incredibly difficult to achieve. And what would you regard as a realistic target to say, we're doing about as well as we can?
Yeah, I think the high 90s is a comfortable place to be. I mean, ideally, we don't have any. So what we would like is the work around the common and conditional data scoring in terms of any activity to correct problems to be as minimal as possible. And that will mean that the data coming in from the employers is of high quality as possible. I think the biggest area where we probably have problems is scheme member address data. And so if we could find a way of, for example, deferred beneficiaries keeping us up to date with their address, then that's how we're going to be in a better place, I guess. But I don't think, in all consciousness, I could put in a document like this that we are that we don't want to have less than 100%. Ideally, we want to be there, but I'm a realist as well.
Yeah, so am I a realist, and which is why I say I think it would be a considerable miracle if anybody hits 100% on this.
Yeah. I mean, there is a pressure. Sorry, Dennis.
Talking about addresses, they are a hellish thing to match. Can you remind us what the current score is?
It's in the, I think it's a 92.8. We've got an overall pass rating on the document. What we haven't got in here is the 2 score. So again, another thing we could circulate after, just to remind you, is what the, I think it has been in a report previously, what the common and conditional scores are separately for the Cambridgeshire Fund. So we'll confirm that later as well. Thank
you. I mean, I understand you don't want to put in 100%. You don't want to put in something lower than 100%, but realistically, you're never going to hit it. So I do wonder about how that is sensibly promoted. But I'll leave that to you.
Thank you. I mean, I believe the pensions regulator is probably has really quite high expectations around things like address data. We've gone through a process, as you know, of trying to get any address data that is missing, and ran into quite significant practical problems around confidence levels of address data. I mean, Michelle was heavily involved in this, as was Joe. But that doesn't change away the expectation of the regulator, even though we know it is. But yeah, point is noted. Appreciate that, Chairman.
Fine. Then if no other questions, we've been asked to note the content, to note the plan, and I believe we've done that. So we're back now to Michelle on the reporting breaches of the law to the pensions regulator policy.
Yes, thank you. So as we've previously mentioned, this one was due for review. And initially, the new code of practice was due to come into effect from November 21. So obviously at that time, it seemed beneficial to wait for that time. Obviously now that date is passed, we've now felt it appropriate to go ahead and review based on the current code. And what we will do is we will go back once the code is published, just to check, just to make sure if there was any differences. As we understand it, the new code is primarily going to be based on the modules already in place. So although there may be some changes, we think that the fundamental principles of the code will remain the same anyway. So what we will do is obviously just make a judgment further down the line as to whether any of those we feel that are significant enough to bring back to the board and the committee as well. So this is a really important policy because it really identifies those individuals, firstly for having the responsibility for reporting breaches of the law and all the associated legal requirements that go with that. And it details the process to report a breach and any details surrounding the timescales and urgencies of those breaches. In addition, it kind of highlights the importance of keeping good records for us and having a breaches log in place that we can record all material and non-material breaches, just to make sure that our internal standards and processes are kept up to date as well, and to make sure that we can intervene if we need to in any of those. So under section 3 of the main report is really just a summary of some of the key changes that have been made. So as you'll see, there's been some updates to the whole policy, mainly just the tidying up of the policy from where we were a few years ago in terms of branding and job titles and things like that. One important change within that section was the pension regulator phone number. So that's been updated now to make sure that obviously anybody that needs to make a report and wants to do it by the phone can do. The effective date table has been incorporated, and what we're going to see going forward is that being incorporated into all our policies and strategies, just to keep that consistent and to make it easy for the reader to see exactly that audit trail of what policies have been in place when and when they've been reviewed. Under the material significance section, we've just updated the point of clarity there in terms of where it had the admin authority to start with. We've changed to an individual point of contact, which the head of pensions. There's always the danger, we felt, that if you have it too broad and it slips between the cracks because everyone thinks it's somebody else that's dealing with it. And just another one to mention was the additional section that we've added to demonstrate potential measures that could be taken by the pension regulator as well, just to bring the policy kind of into reality terms of, it's important and this is what could happen. So they're the main changes of the policy. You'll see in Appendix 1 is the clean version of the policy that we're proposing, and welcome any comments and feedback on before we take it to the pension committee for approval. And Appendix 2 is the track changes version, which sometimes can look a little bit messy, but at least that way you get the whole suite of changes, including all the really immaterial ones as well. So happy to take any questions or any further suggestions on how we can improve the policy.
Barry, you have a question.
Well, it's more a comment. I do like the sort of traffic light system, to simplify things for people, just so that they know the difference between material and immaterial. The other thing I wondered, I'm not sure it should be necessarily in the document. So we on the board are used to reading papers like this, and I'm sure senior officers would be able to digest the information. But is there like a potted version for staff members, so that they sort of know, a bit like when you first start they'll give you the what happens when a fire alarm goes off, but what their expectation of reporting breaches of the law.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one, because in the service we've actually been doing some work about an induction program and things that could be covered within that, and we're trying to keep officers up to date with the policies that do affect them in terms of their roles as well. So there are certain policies that we are flagging to them and things that they need to do, and this will be one of them once it gets approved again. What I can do, just taking on board your comment, is maybe speak to the team that is doing the induction process, and actually highlighting this might be a topic that we could either mention in the induction process, or maybe just have a short training session on if officers feel it would be appropriate, or even extend it to further than that if other officers feel it would be appropriate as well.
'Cause just from my point of view, I don't think I'm going to be in the bit, I'm not dealing with the fund on a day-to-day basis, so I'm not going to spot breaches in the law. I'm going to be relying on you guys coming to the board and pointing out breaches in the law. So the way I see it, it's actually staff members within the pension fund that would be potentially spotting it. So that would be my worry, that maybe junior members staff wouldn't necessarily know that that's their responsibility to raise any sort of concerns.
Yeah, no, that's really useful. We're doing a piece of work at the minute around breaches and statutory breaches. So what we'll do is we'll incorporate that in and deliver some training on that as well to officers. As you say, it's one of those, isn't it? You don't, unless you know it's a breach of the law, you're not going to be able to report it because you need the knowledge to know that, don't you? So I agree. Yeah.
Thank you, Barry. Michelle, I mean, I have no particular problems with the policy. It looks good. I have a few detail points. One is just a bit of editing that at times you're using a reporter as the description, and sometimes the reporter. And I think at times a reporter should be the reporter. Sorry, it's a bit pedantic and
Yeah, no, that's
whatever.
fine. Thank you. I'll have a look at that.
The flowchart on page 82 is good and perhaps might be Barry's help, but it's the first two boxes on the left, ignoring para 8.2, which is where you've got something serious and really serious, and you don't necessarily go around checking anything. So if one was looking at this as a flowchart for an individual to follow, yeah, you don't go and ask somebody if they're committing fraud. And if that might be giving them the warning as 8.2 is talking about. And then in the middle column, the second box down is actually a question, but doesn't have a yes, no out of it. So there's just, it just needs a little bit of polishing in terms of being a flowchart, particularly if it, at this point, it's indicative of the text, but if you want it to match the text, I think it needs a little bit of work.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that. Some of this information has come from additional guidance that have been provided with the regulator as well to be shared. So I'll see exactly what bits have come from where, and I'll just have a look and see if I can tidy that up a bit.
Okay, and then the other one in terms of getting the right thing done at the right time is page 84, 10.6. The if appropriate, in that requires a judgment. Do you want to try to tighten that up so that people actually do know when it might be appropriate?
Yeah, I'll have a look at that. What I might be able to do is tie that maybe into some of the examples as well. That
Yes.
I might be able to say, for example, see example in appendix. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can have a look at that.
That's fine. It's to say it's because that requires a judgment. It needs. It would help if people given some guidance on it. Otherwise, I have no points on the matter. So I'm taking that the board
having been asked to review the policy, I believe we have actually done that. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Michelle, you get a break. The valuation update is with Corey. So good morning, Corey. Would you like to present the report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to give you a summary, basically an update of where we are with the valuation. All pre-valuation activities, as you can see in the report, have been completed. So that includes some early data cleansing of last year's data to make it easier when we upload the data that's been added this year. We've undertaken some covenant assessments with the riskiest employers in the fund. So that's predominantly those who entered the scheme as community admission bodies with no need to have a guarantor, and some of the bodies in the further education sector as well who don't have a guarantee. We will be taking those results into account when drafting the funding strategy statement, dictating how we separate employers in terms of the risk that we view them under and how we set their policy, their contributions as a result of that. In March, the committee approved the financial and demographic assumptions to be used as part of the valuation as well, which will allow us to go ahead and start making some of those contributions once the data has been fully collected and uploaded to the actuary. In terms of that process, we have collected in the data from employers now. We've analysed that and raised some queries with the employers, which we're in the process of chasing at the moment. The first submission for the Cambridgeshire Fund is going to be in 2 weeks' time. So 2 weeks today, in fact, we'll be doing that initial data upload. So we've got another 2 weeks to get those queries in. But at that stage, we'll identify any tolerance breaches as well from the actuary's point of view. So it will help us direct any queries that we haven't received from employers. We can prioritise which ones we're going to chase up as a result of that. So any delay in getting those queries shouldn't hold up that data upload, because in fact, it will help us focus what we need to do afterwards. We're now in project management stage. I had the latest project meeting on Wednesday. All activities that are undergoing at the moment are on track. We've got a meeting coming up with the actuary on the 12th of July to start discussing some of the items that are going to go into the funding strategy statement, including the future of employer pooling for the designating bodies. We're going to be looking at the cessation basis that we use for exit employers as well, reviewing whether that is still appropriate and has the right level of prudence involved. When we had a look at this earlier in the process, it looks like the process might be too prudent. So we're going to look to relax some of that prudence. And that's happened because of the way that gilt yields have moved over the years. That gilt-based calculation has become more and more prudent as we've gone along. So we're just going to look to rebase that potentially. Accounting and asset data has been provided to the actuary already as well. So that part of the data has been received. And we have also had sign off from the committee over the basis to be used when setting contribution rates for the large local authorities. So the county, districts and unitary authorities and the police and fire authorities as well. And we've had the initial conversations with the CFOs of those organisations to let them know what options are available for them so that we can then look to agree individual contribution strategies for each of them. The direction of travel on that is that the position with the fund at the moment is that we can relax their contributions slightly and look to bring down those contribution rates by a maximum of 1% per year during the valuation cycle is what we're looking at. That's not necessarily what we're going to do, but that's the option that we've got available. We can go that way. A freeze is also on the table, and a couple of the authorities have also indicated that they'll be looking at whether a freeze or reduction is what's actually most appropriate. So they're not just going for the reduction straight away. They are taking a considered approach to that. Included with the report, I have put the plan on the page for the project so that you can see the key dates of certain activities. And in the report, I've also summarised the decisions that the committee will be taking throughout the rest of the project and the dates of the committee meetings where those decisions will be put to them so that you can provide adequate scrutiny of those if you wish to. I don't have anything else to add to the report, but obviously I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Corey. That's excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Simon or Barry, do you have any questions? I don't. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Corey. Yes. This is just a sort of overall question. Is there anything in this valuation project that concerns you, Corey?
At this time, no. The biggest risk at this stage of the project is the data, and when we've got that available to upload to the actuary. And as I said, we do have enough data available at the moment to go with that initial upload. Once we do that at the middle of the month, we've got until the end of the month to clean that data. So as I said, we can focus on the most critical errors there to make sure that we chase up any outstanding queries. So at the moment, I haven't got any risks that have moved to an issue. Let's put it that way. We obviously have a list of risks that we're expecting, and those are mainly around timings and hitting the key deadlines. But everything, like I say, is running smoothly at the moment and on track.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Chair.
And Corey, just to confirm, I presume this is what has happened at each valuation in the past, and that's why you're reasonably confident that we're on target for everything.
Absolutely, yes. This is very similar to what we've done in previous years, and actually we're in a better position this time because of using iConnect. We had most of the data in before the end of the year, so we're not having to chase employers up for submitting their year end like we have done in the past. We've had quite a bit of pressure in just collecting the data up until the beginning of July previously, whereas now we're chasing the queries rather than chasing the data itself.
That's good to hear. Thank you. So if we have no further questions, we're being asked to note the valuation update, and thank you therefore, Corey, that I believe we have done.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Michelle, I believe the forward agenda plan is yours, and it looks as though we are certainly going to be busy in the next few meetings. Is there anything you felt you wanted to highlight apart from just that issue we discussed earlier?
Yeah, just the usual. Obviously, it's subject to change depending on when some of the guidance comes out. Obviously, we've had to reschedule things like the good governance review plans and things like that already. So some of those may continue to change. But apart from that, really, it's just your opportunity. If there's something you'd like to see on there and something you'd like us to consider, then please let us know and we can look into that. But it's as it stands at the moment, but yeah, may change slightly.
Councillor King, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I just am a bit concerned about the length of the meeting, of our next meeting in November. There seems to be an awful lot of items on there. Do we have the facility, or should we consider having the facility in future of perhaps identifying a date or two during the year for a reserve meeting?
Yeah, so in terms of the reports, we're well aware that the next couple of meetings actually are quite full, partly because of the things that are coming up that are hot topics at the moment that we need to cover. And partly, obviously, we've got the policies and strategies that are feeding through as well. The only thing I'd probably say at this point is it might be worth seeing a little bit nearer the time as to whether we're actually in a position to go ahead with some of those. Some of those might naturally be deferred. But in terms of the additional meeting point, obviously I'm happy to take direction from the chair and democratic services of whether that's viable or whether some of these do push into the next financial year. It's trying to get that balance, isn't it, of looking at what we need to, but obviously not having so much that we can't give it the time and dedication we need to. So
I think that's the problem, Michelle, in a nutshell. And also, of course, you know, meetings that go on for sort of 4 or maybe even 6 hours, you know, it's difficult to give items the attention they deserve at that length of time. So, I mean, I'm just suggesting something that happens at the county council is that when the meeting cycle comes out, there are some reserve dates identified, and then those can be either used or dropped as necessary. But I'm just suggesting that that might be something to consider in the future. And the other question I had was, did I understand that we're actually meeting in person in November?
Yeah,
Yes.
so I think we had a conversation at the pre-meeting. We've had some mixed feedback about whether we should start to have face-to-face meetings or keep virtually. So we've kind of come to the agreement that we'll start with an annual meeting that's going to start from this November, and really just see how it goes from there, just to give kind of that face-to-face experience as well. Chair, I don't know whether you want to add anything further to that from your perspective.
I certainly have had some input from other members of the board of wishing to have, if not all of our meetings face-to-face, occasional face-to-face meetings. And together with Barry and officers, we felt that moving to start with one meeting in the year actually being face-to-face was a worthwhile experiment. And I hope you're okay with that.
Well, to be brutal, no, because I think that, there are two things that I think are a problem. One is that we hear about the staffing pressures on the pension fund, and I'm not sure that it's a good use of officer time to travel to New Shire Hall. I'm not sure it's a good use of my time, and I do often have a commitment on Friday afternoons, which will mean that I will have to leave the pension board meeting probably at about 11:30 or not attend at all. And thirdly, Cambridge County Council declared a climate change emergency a while ago, and I think using energy, in the term of petrol or diesel or even electricity to get to a physical meeting when there is no requirement to do so is again not is sending the wrong message. We often talk about the importance of taking into account climate change in our investment decisions, and here we as a board basically kicking that into the long grass. So I absolutely vehemently oppose even an occasional meeting, but I'm prepared to attend the November meeting if I am able to, if only that I can make this point equally forcefully again. So that's, I just think it's a terrible idea.
Thank you, Councillor King. Barry, do you have anything to add?
It was actually, I was wanting to add to about the previous point Councillor King brought up about a packed agenda and having a reserve meeting, but my suggestion would be maybe for those meetings, for me, it's better that maybe an hour is added on to the meeting time. I don't know what other people's thoughts are on that. And yeah, regarding Councillor King's last point, personally, I would put just at least once a year to meet in person, but that's my view. But to be kept to a minimum along the grounds of the climate emergency, and okay, and that's basically my points.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor King?
Yes, I accept it's a difficult one, Barry, and my personal view is that there's a stronger argument in having some training events in person, because I think that enables us to get to know each other in a way that it's impossible to virtually. And it also encourages greater interaction. We used to have events at White Boston Lake, and I think that, say, one of those a year would be better personally than having one of those a year in person would be better than actually having board meeting in person. That's just my, that's just based upon my long experience of the pension board. I know Dennis is longer, and I think Barry's might well be as well. But anyway, I that's my feeling, and I will try and attend the November one. And I take Barry's point about going on for an hour. We do have a policy at the council, which I think if we're going to do that, we need to adopt at the pension board. 2 hours, we have a break. So I think that would be essential if we're going to go over that 2-hour limit. Thank you.
Thank you. What I would like to do, if I may, is to poll the other members of the board about this meeting. I went with Barry that I felt it was a reasonable once a year that we should actually meet. But let me check with the other board members as to whether we should continue with that or not. On the meeting length, my own parish council has a 2-hour limit on meetings, and I think if we're going to go over that by any length, we are definitely going to have a break. But let's just see how long that November agenda actually turns out to be. It may, if things move, it may not be quite as long as we fear, but that will only make something else much worse later on. So the suggestion of how we're going to handle that is actually something we really do need to take on board and work with Michelle and Democratic Services on that, if that's acceptable.
And Chair, thank you for indulging. I'm not going to throw my toys out of the pram over this. And if the majority wish to have a face-to-face in November, I'll do my best to attend, given my other commitments.
Thank you, Simon. It would be the first time we've actually met face-to-face for a number of years. And certainly, I met Councillor Slatter a few weeks ago, and she was certainly commenting on the fact that one looks different in real life, perhaps being a little taller than one otherwise might have expected. So perhaps the occasional meeting may be worthwhile. However, I think at this point we've pretty much discussed and noted the forward agenda plan, so we will take that forward.
Chair, can I reiterate my suggestion about at least one face-to-face training event per year being more useful than just meeting, than just having a physical meeting?
Yes, I'm not sure if there are any board and committee training events of that nature that we used to have at White Boston planned, are there?
That's something that we're starting to look at again now. So part of the training has been delivered with some of the advisors that we've got throughout the year. Obviously, pension board members are invited to watch those training sessions. We've obviously completed all the mandatory training that was at the beginning of the year. We've had the cyber resilience, and we've had the valuation links sent round since then. So what the plan is now is we're going to look at the training schedule going forward now. So now that I've got those comments on board, what we'll do, we'll make sure that there's a selection of different types of training available, some being virtually, maybe one or two, like you've suggested, being held as an event. And also we've got the external training conferences as well. So hopefully between those three approaches, it'll be a varied training plan that will appeal to different people for different reasons, and hopefully then we can capture as many people as we can by doing that. So hopefully we're literally due to start to populate that as soon as we can. So hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have some further information on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Chair.
Right, we will now move to items for which it's necessary to exclude the press and public. Do members agree to resolve that the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the report contains except information under paragraph 1 and 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, and it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed in discussion, as it contains information relating to an individual and the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Do members agree?